But, ultimately what it comes down to is whatever's sustainable is what is going to work for you. If you're trying stuff that's not sustainable, if you're eating foods that you don't enjoy eating, it's not sustainable. It's not going to work long term. You might be able to do it for a week, but you can't stick that for months or whatever the case is.
Welcome to the Carla Rand Show. I've got Marcus Gates on here with me. Marcus is an online personal trainer and nutrition coach. Welcome to the Carla Rand Show, Marcus. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about you, Marcus. Okay, so you have, kind of your own idea about fitness and nutrition and what works for you. You work with a lot of clients. Tell us, what is little Marcus like when you were little? How did you grow up? And then what got you from little Marcus to being a fitness and nutrition trainer?
Yeah, I love that question. So as a kid, I played travel baseball my whole life. I played a lot of basketball as well, but I've always been, a baseball guy for the most part. But my dad was taking me, in a baby carrier to the gym ever since I was an infant. So I've always been kind of a part of the gym. I grew up in the daycares there, and I always want to go hang out on the workout floor as my parents would work out and stuff like that. So I was always kind of immersed in the gym setting. So it's always been, a fascination of mine and interest for sure. And then, as I progressed through baseball, got into, middle school and definitely got on high school is when I really started focusing on lifting myself in terms of weight training and balancing out with baseball. But so I've always been super, super active. And ultimately, my career in baseball, I knew was going to come to an end at some point. So that was always I knew bodybuilding to me was going to be my next outlet for that competitive edge. And, I wanted something that's always going to keep me fit and happy and active and all that type of stuff. So the gym just made sense to do that because, if I was going to be doing intramural sports or something like that, like in a rec league, I'm going to be getting injured the older I get with that stuff. And ultimately, I can't put as much emphasis on that. So that's kind of how I focus on the gym setting and personal training and bodybuilding and stuff of that nature. But so then as my career in baseball kind of ended, I had a couple knee surgeries. I knew my next step, like I said, was to go straight into bodybuilding. So 9 months after my ACL surgery and I quit baseball, I started my first bodybuilding competition. And then after that, that became my new passion, my new interest outside of baseball. And then after a couple shows, I had people start kind of reaching out to me about, helping them, achieve their physical goals or health goals and stuff of that nature. And at first I was kind of turning them down. And then, I started taking on a couple clients just a little bit, just for a little, for date money is all it was at the time. I just started dating who's now my wife, but my girlfriend at the time. And she was like, no, you should definitely do this. I was a broke college kid. I had no income. So that was a good little supplemental income. But I found a passion for it, for coaching in general. I've also coached baseball in my life as well, but I love getting to coach people on their lifestyles and stuff of that nature. But I kind of went on a little tangent there, but that's kind of that's a little speedy journey to my life.
Thanks. Okay, I'm curious. Why did your parents work out? Because most parents don't work out.
Good question. Actually, this is something I kind of skipped over here. So my dad always worked out in the gym. My mom did as well. And then around the time of I was probably 6 or 7 when I really started getting focused on baseball, and we started, having practice every night and weekend travel and stuff like that. My mom stopped exercising for the most part. And then my dad always maintained, he's always been a super, super active guy, but his nutrition has always been terrible. Both my parents, nutrition has just been what is nutrition? But, my dad was always he would preach to me, hey, you can't outwork, a bad diet, but then he would go and try to outwork a bad diet. But I'm always happy that, he was always been in the gym at least 3 or 4 days a week my entire life. So I always had that role model. And then, my mom was the more average American, where get home from work after a stressful long day, I sit on the couch and just veg out until it's bedtime. And that's kind of always been her thing. So, I got to see kind of both. And then, as I started getting a little bit older, and really once I started the interest in bodybuilding, I was like, okay, you got to eat these certain ways. But ultimately that led me to be why are we eating this certain way and things of that nature? So, I did have good role models, but then some of what I've taken upon, I wouldn't say it's been in spite of my parents, but I learned what not to do in some of these areas. And then I've been okay, I'm going to go a completely different direction.
And isn't that what life's about, right? It's you learn from everybody. I learn from you. You learn from me. We learn from our families, parents, whatever. We learn what to do, what not to do. And I think that's so powerful. And sometimes learning what not to do is just as powerful, maybe more in some cases, than learning what to do, right?
Yes. I do think that, it is really hard to learn what not to do, especially from your parents, because mean, most of us, we end up, a lot of our traits, whether we want it to be that way or not, we turn out to be a lot like our parents. And so, I'm very fortunate to have went a different direction in terms of my nutrition. I think the fact that I found bodybuilding is what helped me kind of steer a different direction with it. But if I hadn't found that, like if I had just been, got out of baseball and then just went into, playing rec softball or rec baseball or pickup games, basketball, stuff like that, I would have never gotten interested in the nutrition side of things. So it's cool because it's kind of come full circle, because now I'm getting to help my parents with nutrition and all those things that they didn't show me, I'm getting to show them. So that's kind of a different way of doing things. But yeah.
So you were playing baseball and you played it in college, and then you had an injury, then you had another injury, and it kind of came to the point, Marcus, where you were like, I just can't continue with this. So you quit baseball, and then you're like, I still have all this drive. I have all this energy. So you shifted that to bodybuilding, correct?
Of course. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. And what have you learned about nutrition? Because we're talking about nutrition. You're talking about the changes. What are the big changes that you had to make?
It always comes down to consistency in whatever we're doing. If we have any sort of goals in life, consistency is always the name of the game, and just being patient with it. But ultimately, what I've learned and what I've tried to instill in my clients is just learning, finding a good balance between your wants and your needs. That's something I always kind of come back to, is that, do I want chocolate chip cookies every single day? Of course I do. That's my favorite thing in the whole world. But I know that that's not aligned with my goals. That's not going to be a healthy thing for me to do on a daily basis. So like, it's just balancing that out. Like, I'm going to have my chocolate chip cookies whenever it makes sense. I'm going to have whatever, foods sound good, but I want to find that balance with it that allows me to look good, it allows me to feel good, allows my whole body just to function optimally, but then also not be so restrictive that I have to cut out all these things that I love. I would say a kind of part of it, especially when I was younger, I was like, I want to work out so I can eat whatever I want, but then not have the negative, physical appearance with that type of stuff. So that's always kind of sitting in the back of my mind. But ultimately what it comes down to is finding the balance between your wants and your needs. And if you can find a healthy balance with it, then that's when it's sustainable. That's when it's fun and you're reaching your goals, but you're not having to cut out all the stuff that you love in life as well.
So what is a typical eating day for Marcus Gates? Okay. Like on a good day, let's say, or on an average day.
I would say most of my days are good days. It didn't start like that. It didn't originate like that, but again, it comes back to consistency. So what I always also talk to my clients about, and I live myself, is having certain staple meals. So like, this isn't necessarily what I expect from my clients or for anybody else, but like I've had the same, if I have 5 meals a day, 2 or 3 of those have been the same for probably the last decade. And that's just, it's me kind of an autopilot with that. And that, I'll mix up the different carbs, the different proteins, the different, veggies and stuff like that. But for the most part, I have the same well-rounded meals 2 or 3 times a day. That way I know that even if I kind of go off the rails a little bit with some other meals, I had 2 or 3 really, really quality meals. And, I'm going to get my protein in, I'm going to get, the right amount of everything else. And so, a day for eating for me is pretty consistent year round. It just changes in the quantities of like, especially carbs and fats, depending on what my personal goal is. But so ultimately, sometimes like if I'm cutting, I'll fast usually until about noon, but it ultimately comes down to how many calories am I eating right now? And is that manageable to get in from like noon to 8? Sometimes it's not. So like right now, I start the day with, I use a brand called New Ethics. It's protein powder called Metapure. And so I'll usually do a scoop to 2 scoops of that every morning with some chia seeds to get in, good, healthy omega-3 fats and fiber. And then I usually do their gourmet greens as well. But always kind of some sort of variant like that.
Is it powdered greens or is it like the real greens?
Powdered greens, that's not something I like to lean on a whole lot because obviously, some companies it's, heavy metals and stuff in there. This is a company that I personally trust with that type of stuff. But aside from that, so like I'll start my day with usually some sort of a shake like that, something quick and easy in the morning. And then usually I'll eat, at lunchtime, chicken, rice, green beans, or chicken, rice, and broccoli is pretty consistent. And then usually the same meal when I have my last class of the day, because I'm an elementary school PE teacher. So when my last class gets out of there, I'll have that meal. And then, I'll have usually 2 or 3 meals in the evening as well. And that just kind of varies again from what sounds good. What am I doing that week? What meals do I already have made? What are me and my wife doing for dinner and things of that nature. And so those I'll adjust as needed to kind of fit what my day or what my week looks like.
So do you kind of portion things out in containers then? Or do you just kind of grab whatever? Like, how do you prep?
Yeah. So, meal prep is one of the most important things you do. Even if you work at home and you don't ever leave the house, still having your food meal prepped is always key, because if you don't have the food ready to go that you can just pop in the microwave really quick, then generally what's going to happen is you're either going to miss a lot of meals and undereat, which I've found to be a much more common problem than constantly overeating. A lot of people will just undereat, and then they'll binge eat at dinner time or binge eat in the evening and just on snacks and stuff like that. So, I find that if you're not meal prepped, then you're going to be under eating for the majority of times, or you're going to be choosing foods that are just not healthy for you because they sound good, or it's just easier a lot of the time. Is
hamburger, box of crackers.
Yeah, something. And it never, there's really no rhyme or reason. Most people are just kind of grabbing whatever. So like, meal prep, even for the person who's the most focused on nutrition, if you don't have things kind of ready to go, you're making things really, really tough on yourself. So yeah, I always make sure I meal prepped. Actually, before we hopped on this, I went ahead and threw in like probably 8 pounds of chicken into a pressure cooker. And then my other pressure cooker that I have, I put in, I think like 4 or 5 pounds of ground turkey. So then essentially what I'll do with that, like I won't eat all that meat in 1 week, but what I'll do though is I'll put it into a big Tupperware. So usually I'll do like taco seasoning with it, just to kind of give it some spice and stuff. And then I'll shred up that chicken into a big Tupperware, and I'll usually do it in 2 Tupperwares. I'll freeze one of them so I have it for the following week, and then it just lessens what I have to do meal prep wise. And then the other chicken I have ready to go for the week. That way, now I'm only meal prepping at least my proteins like that twice a month instead of doing it every single week. Some people like to do it every 3 or 4 days. To me, like as busy as I am with everything I have going on, it's about finding kind of what works for you. And so that's always kind of worked for me. Same thing, usually my carb of choice, if I could do sweet potatoes every single meal, I would do that in a heartbeat, but it just is much more, takes up a lot more time to prep that. So I generally will do jasmine rice or basmati rice as my core carb that I usually eat. And then, ideally, if you can do fresh veggies, that's awesome. But again, coming back to, what is efficient, what is cost efficient, everything else, I'll usually do frozen veggies of some sort. And that I'll kind of vary so I can get in different micronutrients and stuff like that.
So frozen veggies, you just steam them, or what do you do?
No, so like with frozen veggies, what I'll do, so I've done a couple different ways and different times of the year, whatever I'm doing, however busy I am, it'll kind of vary. So some days I'll just have a giant thing of rice, I'll have a giant thing of chicken, and then I'll have my frozen green beans or veggies, whatever I'm doing. Other times, like what I do usually during the school year is I'll go ahead and lay out 10 glass Tupperwares, and then I'll toss in, I'll start with, usually those bags of veggies are about 1 pound a piece, so 16 ounces. And so I'll usually divide that into about 3 different containers. So I'm getting about 5 ounces of veggies with each of those meals. And so I just do it frozen. I just put that straight into the Tupperware, and then I put that in the fridge, and then it thaws out, and then I microwave it, and it's all good to go anyway. But it thaws out kind of over those couple of days, and then I'll put in whatever rice I need that's aligned with my goals and what my eating looks like that week. And then same thing with my protein of whatever I'm doing.
And so what about your clients? Do you teach them to do the same thing, or do you just kind of work with wherever they're at kind of?
Yeah, I mean, it's always working with wherever they're at. Everybody comes to me in completely different places with totally different backgrounds and experience levels and stuff like that. So, I try to meet them wherever they are. But also it's about just, showing them, hey, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. There's not one way that fits. Ultimately, what it comes down to is, and this is how clients learn the best as well, is, trial and error. Try it one way this week. See how you like that. If that's sustainable, if that's efficient, if that's something you can do on a consistent basis, perfect. If that's not, then okay, let's, change things up the next week. Try it a different way. Whether you're doing individual containers, you're doing, some people like to grill their chicken or grill their proteins, whatever it is they're eating. Some people do like the potatoes and stuff like that, and they would rather put the time into the meal prep of that side of thing. Whereas me, I just, I can just pop in rice, leave it, go to the gym, come back, and it's ready to go for the whole week. And I've got the giant pressure cooker so that I can do everything in bulk, just to kind of get everything. So again, it kind of comes back to what are people's preferences. I do have some clients that like, I can't heat anything up. I have to cook everything fresh. I'm like, hey, if you can make that work with your schedule, fantastic. But, ultimately what it comes down to is whatever's sustainable is what is going to work for you. If you're trying stuff that's not sustainable, if you're eating foods that you don't enjoy eating, it's not sustainable. It's not going to work long-term. You might be able to do it for a week, but you can't stick that for months or whatever the case is. So, again, we meet kind of where they are. figure out, okay, try out this way, try out this way, try out this way. Let's see what kind of works for you. And then go from there. And then same thing with like the different food types. I lay them out kind of, I take their questionnaire with like their food preferences on it. And then I build out, okay, here's a diet plan that like I would recommend you eat that's aligned with your goals. Here's what meals look like. Here's what, combinations look like for you as well. And these are in the numbers, like the calories, the macros, the proteins, fats, carbs, are all aligned with your goals as well. I also take into account sugar and fiber as well to make sure people are getting, the right amounts of that type of stuff as well. Because you're in Canada, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of Americans, it might be the same thing in Canada as well. A lot of Americans get way too little amounts of fiber, way too little amounts of protein, usually a high amount of processed sugars and processed carbs. And so I kind of just flip that. But yeah, so I'll show them that. But then I usually, not usually, every client has another sheet on their PDF that has all the different protein options. And like, here's what 4 ounces of 93.7 hamburger looks like versus 93.7, ground turkey and salmon, and same thing with the carbs and same thing with the fat options as well. So they can look at like, okay, what sounds good this week? And they can kind of create their own diet plans based off of the numbers that we're talking about.
Yeah. So there's a little more freedom. It's not like you have to eat this every day in this way. Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, like my goal, like, a lot of clients are like, hey, I don't think I can stick to this for 6 months. I'm like, I don't want you to. I don't expect you to at all. I want you to kind of start here just to get into the habit of things and start doing things the right way and try it this way. And then start tweaking things, making substitutions, making it fit what your preference is, what sounds good to you. And that's another thing I always take into account, like I said, is like the foods that I'm putting on a plan like that. How much time is this going to take? How much money is this going to cost? And again, does it meet their food preferences? And once we kind of find the healthy balance with all that stuff, then it's much more easy to stick to.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about training too, but I'm glad we kind of fleshed out the nutrition, because I feel like that's really the biggest problem. People always like, hey, can you train me? And then so we're training. Okay, well, I want to get rid of this fat, or I'm like, well, that's diet, honey. Like that's diet. Like you can't, you can exercise all you want, but it's going to be your diet that's going to help you lose the fat, right? So that's what it comes down to. So I'm glad that we covered that. So thank you. When it comes to training, what have you found for yourself is the most effective? Again, it probably depends on what you're doing, right? And then what do you find works best for clients?
Yeah. Great question. So again, like my background is mainly in bodybuilding. In high school, we did the different powerlifting movements, stuff like that. Squat, bench, clean, all that stuff. It does kind of translate to bodybuilding, but not so much to clean. But aside from that, that I don't like to powerlift. That's not my thing. My thing is longevity, and not that you can't be a powerlifter and live a long, healthy life in terms of how your body feels. But a lot of powerlifters I know, whether they're in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s or 50s or 60s, the older you get up there and the longer you've been doing powerlifting and things of that nature, joints are just wrecked. Everything hurts. I met a guy a couple of weeks ago at this function I went to, and he was telling me all of his different numbers that he hit back in the day. And he's like, I literally can't bend over and tie my shoes though. He's like, I still go to the gym every day, but like, I literally can't bend over. I can't even turn my head this way because I've had so many neck surgeries, stuff like that. Now that's an extreme case. But so again, it comes back to me is like, what's going to allow me to get into the gym tomorrow or next week or next month or 20 years from now? I'm 28. So I want to still be able to go to the gym and train when I'm 70 and 80 and 90. Like that would be ideal for me. So that's kind of what I'm setting myself up for. But with that said, when I first started training, I was always on YouTube looking at my favorite bodybuilders, Kai Green, Phil Heath, Jay Cutler, Branch Warren, all these monsters in terms of like how big and strong they were. And I was trying to kind of replicate what they were doing in the gym. And I'm like, these guys were all running, all these cycles of steroids, stuff like that. I'm totally natural, but I have the work ethic. So if I train like they do, I can get really, really far. Well, I was training 6-7 days a week for 2 hours a day as a natural, 18-year-old. And I did that until I was about 23, 24. And, part of that is I love the gym so much. And I just love training and working out that I never wanted to take an off day. It was also a complex for me because I've always been undersized. I'm 5'6". And naturally, if I didn't work out and eat like I do, I'd probably walk around at 130 pounds. Well, I don't want to be 130 pounds and, 5'6". If I'm going to be short, then I'm going to make everything else as big as I possibly can. I'm going to control my controllables. So that was the thing for me as well, as I never want to take a day off the gym because I was like, I'm going to get small today. So it took me some years and I started understanding, I'm like, I don't really need this. And so actually it was one of my coaches from my last show that I did, because I'm a natural professional bodybuilder in the IPU organization. And he prep me for a couple shows. And I actually hired him as a coach because I knew how much he prioritized rest. And I was like, I can't force myself to take rest days. So I'm going to pay somebody to tell me take some rest days. And so it was that catalyst. I was like, okay, I know I'm not going to do my own. So I paid him, and he was a fantastic coach, awesome stuff. But the most valuable thing he gave me was the understanding that, dude, if you just train intensely and just optimize what you're doing for 3 or 4 days a week for an hour at a time, that's all you need to progress, to get stronger, to build muscle. And then you're letting your body rest. And especially as a natural lifter like myself, that rest is so, so huge. And that's something I was really underutilizing for a lot of years. And no wonder why I had so many aches and pains. I mean, I was, 24 with my lower back was always hurting. My knees were aching. I mean, I had 2 knee surgeries, not from lifting, but you get it. And then, I had shoulder issues as well. A lot of that was from being an ex-baseball player all my life, but also just how much I was training. So I learned less is more. And that was, again, one of the most valuable things, because it used to be like, hey, if I missed the gym, I was angry. I was upset about it. I was feeling all these different emotions about it whenever I would be missing sessions. And so that showed me that, hey, I can back off. Less is more. Just train smarter, not harder. And that's been a world changer for myself.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of people look at me because I teach classes and they're like, oh, you're training all the time and that's why you're so fit and whatever. It's like, well, that's partly true, but also I train for endurance, right? Because I'm teaching classes, I'm working with clients. So for me, it's endurance. What would be more effective is to go in 1 hour, maybe 4 or 5 days a week, train really hard, lift heavy, and then rest the rest of the time. But because I don't do that, I have to adapt because I don't want to overtrain and whatever. So I think everybody has sort of different goals and different reasons why they do it. But I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people see me and they're like, oh, I got to train more like Carla. No. You got to train smarter, not harder. And the way that I train is I have to do it that way, right? It's necessity. And if I start lifting really heavy and I'm doing so many, I'm going to totally blow things out. And I've done that. I've hurt my rotator cuffs and stuff like that. So I have to be careful. And so, rest is super important. Diet is super important. And training like a crazy person over and over for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, it's not actually going to get you any further ahead in most cases.
And oftentimes it just puts you behind, because you do have all these aches and pains, or you are getting injured. Then you're out for a month.
I know.
And then you can't and then, I'm depressed because that's my favorite thing to do ever is go work out. So I'm like, even though I would love to go work out for 2 hours a day, every single day, one, it's really not feasible. The older I've gotten, with more responsibility, stuff like that, I don't have the time in the day to go do that, or my time in my week. But ultimately, you're just kind of digging this hole for your body, and just mentally and everything else. Cortisol levels go through the roof when you're training like that over and over again, especially if you're not getting adequate rest. And it's just, it's all a compounding effect when you do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That was probably the most valuable thing I've learned in my training experience. And the difference was, when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, like I'm a young male, I've got all this testosterone going through me. Like I'm recovering. I can go hit chest today and I can hit it again in 2 days and be fine and recover with that. You can't do that as the years get, once you get into your mid 20s, once you get into your late 20s. So that was the hardest part, is like backing off of that and feeling like I was going to get weaker, but I've only gotten stronger by doing that. And I've only felt better, and I've only gained muscle. And I've loved that I've learned through trial and error, because I've learned that much more. And then it makes me a better coach for that reason. But that's also kind of partly of like why I'm doing it. I'm like, I don't want somebody to go, spend so much time and energy by doing it harder when we can just do it smarter, and we get the results, we get there a lot faster, and we do it in a healthier manner.
Absolutely. And sustainability, like you said, right? So important. Okay. So Marcus, there's been a lot of things that you've had to overcome in order to get where you are. Like the bodybuilding, it's not a picnic, right? Like the eating and what have you learned?
Sport. It's
right.
To me, it's the hardest sport there is, because it is 24/7. It's not just what you're doing in the gym. Like with baseball, I was there for 2 or 3 hours. That's my baseball work. I don't have to go and do any work the rest of the day or the rest of the night or whatever the case is. I just got to show up practice the next day. Whereas, with this bodybuilding thing, your practice is your workout, but then, hey, you got to go control all 5 meals that you're going to eat today. You got to go get to bed at a certain time. You got to go get in your supplements. You got to get in your water intake. You got to manage your stress levels. And there's so many things that go into it. So it's a 24/7 sport. And it's not for everybody, but anybody who does it, like, I definitely commend them, because it's a lot. It definitely is.
What have you learned?
It's taught me discipline more than anything else. I've always had discipline, but this, again, when it's a 24/7 thing, it really teaches you discipline. But like what I've, something I've tried to do every single prep. So I think I've done like 6 or 7 shows now. And every time I've prepped for one, I've learned a lot more. I've learned how to balance things better. When I first did my very first show, I think I did like a 20-week prep for it, and I was meticulous. I was working harder in that situation than smarter, because like I was getting, the Sprout, like a, healthy, like I'd go to like a nice Whole Foods type of grocery store and get green beans with all the ends on them. And I would spend an hour cutting off ends of green beans and then steaming them. And I'm like, I just put an hour worth of work into a food that I'm not even going to enjoy that much. Like there's a need for it, but I'm like, I could just do frozen, and yeah, I might have a little bit less micronutrients or whatever, but I saved an hour of my life by not having to do that. So like I was doing everything like that. So, I started off 100% just everything perfect of what I thought was perfect. And then I realized along the way, I'm like, I can find better balances. I can do this in a smarter, more efficient way. But so again, kind of like you said, or what you asked, I've learned balance, I think, more than anything. Usually a lot of people kind of go the opposite direction and they lose balance when they start doing bodybuilding or things of that nature, because it all becomes focus. But, my wife has challenged me along the way to like, this can't be the only thing that you're focusing on for 6 months at a time. And I feel the same way about that, so there's definitely been hardships along the way with all that type of stuff, but I definitely just being reflective, I think, is the most important thing. And how can I improve from this and be better the next time? Because bodybuilding is a selfish sport, and really weight loss in general can be very, very selfish. Because you have to make sacrifices to be able to get there. Instagram and TikTok make it look like it's a cakewalk. Like you can eat whatever you want and lose weight. And to an extent, yeah. But if you're only eating everything you want every single day, you're not going to lose any weight, and you're not going to feel better, and you're going to feel like trash on the inside and physically and energy and everything else. So like it makes it look like that, but that's not real. And that's ultimately, if you're going into thinking you can do that, it's just not going to happen. Again, it's balancing those wants and those needs. So yeah.
A lot of fitness trainers say, lose 20 pounds or 30 pounds or whatever and eat all the foods you love. Well, that's not the whole story. Yes, you can eat the foods you love, but you can maybe have like one a week or a couple a week. It's not like you just eat all the things that you love all day, every day. I love chocolate. I love chocolate. I love chocolate chip cookies. Like I could eat cookies all day, but I'd feel like crap, right? Yeah. So it's a lot more to it.
Well, and that same thing, as a PE teacher, a lot of the things I talk about with my clients, I'm teaching at a smaller level with my elementary school students. I'm like, guys, if I had to pick, if you told me that they were equally as healthy for you between chocolate chip cookies and broccoli, 100 times out of 100, I'm picking chocolate chip cookies. But ultimately, I know it's giving me nothing quality other than just the satisfaction at the moment that I'm eating it. Whereas the broccoli is going to do a whole lot of other things for me. The other healthier foods are going to do a whole lot of other things for me. So it's all just about balancing that. And so, I try to teach that with them. And that's kind of why, I started this, because I don't know what it's like in Canada or elsewhere around the world, but I know in America, there's no education on nutrition. We learn our fruits and our veggies and stuff like that, but nobody really knows how to apply that knowledge into their daily life. They don't learn to recognize, I'm stressed and that's why I want chocolate right now. I'm stressed and that's why I'm going to do this. Or I'm tired and I did not meal prep, so that's why I'm stopping at McDonald's today. Change some planning around, be a little bit more prep for it, be a little more reflective on why you're feeling these ways at the time. And then boom, that's really the key to a lot of it. And it's just to open the door for a lot more success.
And I think too in our culture, where everybody, like fast food, processed food is just everywhere. And the marketing, and you see pictures of, blizzards and all these great foods, and all you think is like, oh, I'm going to go there and get that. And it's so convenient, because there's not very many drive-throughs where you have healthy food at a half reasonable price. Usually it's expensive.
And if you're doing that, if you're going there, you're not going to choose the healthier foods generally, for the most part. Unless like you have to, and that's just your only option. You're really health minded and you're like, I can't go cook food right now, so I got to get something here. So I'm going to go with the healthy option. But yeah, the majority of those people, they're swinging through there, and if they have an option of healthy or not healthy, they're already doing a practice that's not healthy. Probably not going to pick the healthier food. So yeah, we have that on our fingertips everywhere, and like you said, it's marketed that way as well. And then ultimately, and I think this is a commonality around the world, no matter where you are, is that food brings people together. As a teacher, like I said, it seems like every day there's a reason why it's a potluck in the teacher's lounge. There's a reason why we're all getting fed cookies and cupcakes. And ultimately, like, I think a lot of that is, it does bring people together, food does, but it also, like, as a teacher, teachers are stressed, especially the past couple of years. They're stressed. So there's a lot of things that are kind of out of control with some of that stress. But what's the one thing we can control? I might not be happy the rest of the day. I might not have been happy this morning, but at lunchtime, when I know there's cookies in the lounge, that's my one little 5 minutes of just pure bliss and happiness I'm going to have. And so that's why I think that's such a commonality thing in the workplace in general, like why that's such a big deal, because people aren't really finding happiness other ways. So what can make me happy now? Okay, it's going to be this tasty food.
Quick fix.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately what you're doing there is you're prioritizing your happiness in that 5 minutes, but it's taking away from your long-term happiness. If you have a goal to lose weight and you step on the scale at the end of the week, or you try to, fit on these clothes, whatever the case is, and now you went backwards. Okay, so you sacrificed what your really big focus is, what your really big goal is, just because that moment, that cookie sounded better, or that meal, whatever it is. Cookie's an example for me, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, this is good. I mean, we could go on about fitness and nutrition, this is my language. This is your language. We could talk about this all day, but I want to talk a little bit more, or kind of before we close up here. What is your sort of message to the world, Marcus? We talked about discipline. We talked about balance. What do you think people need to know?
Well, ultimately what this all kind of comes back to is overall just happiness and getting everything you can out of life. And, ultimately, like I said before, I want to be working out when I'm 70, 80, 90 years old. Like I would love to still be active. I still want to go hike and climb mountains at that age. Well, I know that in order to get there, I can't just close my eyes and pray that I make it there, because I'm not going to. I've got to put in work to be able to get there. So that's my thing with it. And ultimately what I want for everybody is that, what I didn't mention earlier, my mom, I don't think she's going to hear this, but if she did, I think she would understand it and understand that it's made my business better and made my mentality better. But I would, when we were going to go out to eat or whatever, it would take her 2 hours to figure out what outfit she was going to wear, because she didn't feel confident in anything, and sometimes that would result in tears, just not feeling good. And I was like, there's so many women that feel that way. And it's more so women, but there's males too that feel that way. They don't feel confident. And then that just, it reduces your fire for anything you want to do in life. And ultimately, to me, health and fitness and the way you feel about yourself, the way you feel about your habits and your choices is going to directly impact everything else you do in life. You can be the best business person in the world, but if you're healthy, you're going to be even better. And you're going to elicit just a little bit more, I don't want to say respect, but I think you can kind of grasp what I'm saying. Like if two people walk into an interview, one of them has all their habits in check, they're healthy, they're drinking water, they have this life to them, this energy to them. And the other person just came from eating McDonald's and they feel sluggish and they feel tired. Even if everything is all equal, this person over here that is doing everything else right, that's controlling their health overall, they're going to be a better fit for it. So ultimately, the more things you're doing positive for yourself, the more you're going to get out of life and more ability to get what you want.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that health and fitness, it seems like this little kind of fringe thing on the side, but it actually is all encompassing. It affects everything, and I think people need to understand that. Well, I think people are starting to understand that, but then it's like, okay, well, how do you build habits? And I think, get a coach, because you're going to have to trial and error. You're going to get frustrated. Get a coach, get a good coach, get Marcus. You could call me. I'll hook you up with Marcus, whatever. Marcus, if people want to find out more about your business, what's the name of it? Where can they go?
So I'm really active on Instagram more than anything. And so my @ on that, my username is just Thriving Lives Fitness. Just all one word. So Thriving Lives Fitness is my Instagram. And then my website is thrivinglivesfitness.com. So either way work, DM me, shoot me an email. Email is marcus@thrivinglivesfitness.com, or just go to my website and then contact me through that. But yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marcus. Really nice chatting with you. Thanks for sharing with us, and all the best for you and your business, and keep rocking out the bodybuilding. Sounds fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you having me on.
You're welcome. Hey, it's Carla. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast today. I have 3 things I want to tell you about myself. But first, please go check out my company, Power Fitness Online. PowerFitnessOnline.com or Power Fitness Online, Facebook or Instagram. What I do there is I help you. I train you so you can get fit, strong, healthy, have energy, feel good, and be at your best. Because in this life, we want to be at our best. I do, you do, we all do. So here's 3 facts about myself. Number one, I've been a fitness trainer for 20 years. Yes, 20 years. Number two, I'm 5'4 3/4, not 5'4 1/2, none of that. 5'4 3/4. Number three, I have 6 kids. Yes, they're all my own. None of them were twins. They're all my own. I had them one at a time. And I love my kids so much. So remember, go to powerfitnessonline.com if you want to get fit and stay fit.